Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you're having a wonderful evening. Chris Wilson, Certified Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Practitioner here, and coming a couple of minutes early. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I got my hair cut, so it's nice and ready to go. Just don't have any hair product to make it look pretty, so we still got the hat on. But man, does it feel nice to actually get a haircut. Wanted to share some things with you this evening, and before we begin, I wanted to show you this one quick diagram on an article I have, and we are just waiting for technology to catch up. You see, well, I will just have to share my screen. I want to show you the brain, a healthy central nervous system, how it functions with a healthy gut, and how these two talk to one another, our healthy gut and how our brain communicate. When they're healthy, you have normal behavior, normal memory or cognition, focus, and normal emotion. Healthy levels of inflammatory cells and or mediators, and normal gut, they say microbiota, but I like to call it your terrain or your ecosystem that lives in your gut, because we've got, millions of bacteria that live down there. Something like 10 to the 13th power. It's insane. And over here, when you have abnormal central nervous system function because of when it says that word dysbiosis, that means an imbalance of your gut bacteria, meaning you've got more pathogenic bacteria with the bad guys versus the good guys. And we see that we have a disease, a state of disease here with altered behavior and cognition. So this could be things like anxiety, depression, autism, even things like dementia, Alzheimer's, and so on, and altered levels of inflammatory cells and or mediators, meaning we have autoimmune conditions like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, and other autoimmune conditions. And then we have obviously the intestinal dysbiosis because of the abnormal gut function. So I wanted to show that before we get into this other screen here. So here we've got Upstream Vitality is the name of my business and website, upstreamvitality.com. Strongly encourage you to go over there and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. And I am a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, also about to become a certified functional medicine practitioner through Functional Medicine University. So really awesome, really excited, and really passionate about health. It's my ministry. It's how I get to share hope and healing to people. And I wanted to talk about environmental toxicity and autoimmunity in the body, mainly through the gut, and explain how this is something that we experience now as modern health challenges. The link between environmental toxicity, leaky gut, and autoimmunity. So I want to begin by having you guys really take a mental screenshot of this slide right here. This is courtesy of Dr. Pompa and his team. And this is the bucket analogy, and I'm sure many of you have really heard this bucket. So it's toxins, trauma, infection, and many other stressors that can fill up and accumulate in the bucket. And what happens is when our bucket fills up, it spills over into inflammation in the body. And you can see on these numerous bubbles that the arrows are pointing to that we've got digestive problems, weight loss resistance, brain fog, fatigue, headaches, hormone dysregulation, muscle and joint pain, high or low blood pressure. And this is all caused by low-grade chronic inflammation that's going on silently without you knowing it, and you're still contributing possibly to the problem. And as a functional medicine practitioner, it's my job to help people who have this silent sickness, is what I like to call it, where their doctor can't really figure out what's going on with them. They've ran tests, and the doctor just says, your tests are normal. It's just all in your head. You're okay. Here's a medication. Now go on your way. Drugs don't solve anything. Now, they can be great life jackets. I do believe that there's a time and place for them, but they're not the end-all be-all solution for our 21st century healthcare epidemic, the explosion of autoimmunity and cancer and these lifestyle diseases. And I say lifestyle because these are mainly driven by our choices that we do on a day in and day out basis. And so there are a host of environmental factors that can trigger autoimmunity. And really this means chemical toxins like heavy metals, mercury, lead, arsenic, aluminum, and we can get these things from just our drinking water that comes from our city. We can get them from vegetables in the ground. We can get these, so basically through the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the foods we eat. And so now you're like, well, sure, Chris, how are we going to avoid this? And we can't avoid it today because we do live in a toxic world, and we can't avoid 100% free toxicity. And so we must reduce our levels of toxic stress that we come into contact with on a daily basis. This can be any type of physical stress, mental, emotional stress, or chemical stress. And I kind of want to focus on the environmental toxin part because I'm kind of, I look at myself as, I want to call myself an expert, but I don't want to elevate myself to that. I'm just try to be a humble person to educate the masses on toxin exposure, whether it's coming internally or externally, and in how we can make a radical change for our greater good. And so I look at myself through the studies I do, and I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to disease, autoimmunity, and its relationship with environmental toxicity. And so these heavy metals that are out there, the things that are in our beauty care products, or the viruses and the bacteria that live amongst us, or the pharmaceutical drugs or the over-the-counter drugs that we take. And so just another example is like the adjuvants, and adjuvants are the stimulants inside vaccinations that really shock the immune system to get it to kind of respond. And so these adjuvants like aluminum hydroxide and even medical silicones that are used in breast implants can cause an autoimmune disorder. One specific autoimmune disorder is Schoenfeld's syndrome. And it's also important to note that, an infection may not necessarily be the inducer, but rather the total burden of infections from childhood on that trigger autoimmunity. And so looking at my wife, whenever she had elevated antibodies to her thyroid and indicating she had Hashimoto's, now never did receive a medical diagnosis or a professional diagnosis from the doctor, but just looking at her blood work, because I'm trained to read and interpret blood work and then, make an assumption based on what I see and her symptoms that she's presenting. It was probably pretty clear that she had or was on the autoimmune spectrum for some type of thyroid disease. And I'm not going to give credit or claim to that because we've done a lot of work where we've reversed a lot of issues. And I'm talking about, chronic gut issues, especially like malabsorption and infectious agents that were living in her gut that we didn't know. So part of the problem is really doing a test. And one of my favorite tests to do on people is called a GI map. And this really looks at the bacterial composition of your gut. So it gives us like this microscopic snapshot in time where we can see if your gut is harboring any infectious parasites or bacterial pathogens, things like H. pylori, Giardia, Cryptosporidium, or leaky gut. When I see all this going on, it's really safe to say that there's leaky gut happening because of the toxins that these nasty bacteria release. And so moving forward, this is a slide from my mentor, Dr. David Jockers, and you can check him out at his website, drjockers.com, and he's got some really awesome infographics that he's given me permission to use. And so this is just on IBS alone. And here's some of the numbers here that you can go through and really look at how this one umbrella term, irritable bowel syndrome, is kind of like this condition where it encompasses a whole number of gastrointestinal conditions or disorders. And so anything can really be called IBS when we're dealing with the gut. And if you look here on this next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit here on this slide a little bit because the diet of humans has changed really dramatically since the Second World War, especially in more industrialized countries. like in the Western world and in urban areas of places like the United States. So for thousands of generations, since the dawn of mankind and the time of the Bible, humans ate food shortly after harvesting and when it was in season. Meat was occasionally consumed, and much of it was caught in the wild. So really think about seasonal eating here and how often we can just go to our local grocery store, whether it be Whole Foods, Walmart, Costco, Central Market, Natural Grocers, or Sprouts, and we can go to the frozen food section and buy a bag of blueberries in the wintertime. Now, most fruits are only grown in the summer. There are tropical places that can grow foods all year round, but when you think of the majority of the people, biblically speaking, or just in modern places today where you truly do get 4 seasons, you're not going to be able to get berries all year round. You're only going to be able to get things in its season. And so just with that being said, we have the convenience of going down to our local market and picking up whatever we want. But really what I want to point out on this slide here is Chick-fil-A. And don't get me wrong, I love Chick-fil-A. I hardly eat it because I try not to eat fast food unless I absolutely have to. And even then, I'm very scrutinous about which type of fast food I'm going to consume. And it's better just to really practice fasting. Take some coconut oil with you and eat some coconut oil. But when you look at the ingredients here of this Polynesian sauce, which is probably like the go-to Chick-fil-A sauce that everybody reaches for when they're ordering Chick-fil-A. So we have sugar, which is refined white table sugar. We have soybean oil. About 95 to 98% of all soybeans harvested in the United States are genetically modified. And so the oil that comes from these genetically modified soybeans are high in omega-6. They're high in inflammatory agents or causing an inflammatory response in your body because they oxidize super quickly. It would be like if I took a lighter to this piece of paper right here, or I wish I had something that would be more of an example, but this piece of paper right here, it would light pretty quickly. And you can think of like a tissue paper would burn up much faster than that piece of paper. So that's what happens when we eat these processed hydrogenated oils, especially ones like canola, soybeans, safflower, and of the like. So we have water, we got corn syrup, and corn syrup again is very cheap to make and produce, and it's a substitute as a sweetener and as a thickening agent as well. And it's also genetically modified and creates a very inflammatory response in the body. So then we got distilled vinegar, tomato paste, salt, paprika. We have propylene glycol, which is a environmental toxicant that actually is carcinogenic and can really do some harm. And then you look over here and we got more corn syrup, xanthan gum, corn starch, and beet juice for coloring. And so eating these, every once in a while, again, might not be very harmful, but would you ever suggest to your children eating rat poison? No. And I'm not trying to say that Polynesian sauce is rat poison, but when you consume it on an everyday basis, and if you're consuming it up to 3 times a day for, lunch, a snack, and dinner, or whatever, it really adds up, and it adds up quickly. And this is why we see in such our young generation disease happening really quickly, and more kids or more children being born with autoimmunity or diseases or any neurological disease or condition like ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, and of the like. And so we really have to be cognizant of the type of foods that we're putting into our body. And so again, in the past 50 years, our foods have undergone a considerable transformation through being genetically modified, sprayed down with pesticides, and we've developed actually new strains of grains, especially in wheat, rice, soy, and corn. And it's just amazing because in the United States we use more genetically modified crops than the rest of the world combined. And we use chemicals such as pesticides, fungicides, and insecticides for other crops such as fruits and vegetables. And then, we inject dairy cows with hormones passing them on into dairy products, and then we consume those, and then it affects our own hormone production. And they're injected with antibiotics. These hormones and antibiotics and vaccines that we give to our animals to keep the disease rates down also contain heavy metals such as arsenic. And chicken feed, mainstream chicken feed is loaded with arsenic, and so that gets passed right down on into the eggs that we are consuming, unless we're opting for organic, pasture raised, free range type eggs and non-GMO products. And then hormones are used heavily in the concentrated animal feeding operations, which include, cattle, turkey, chicken, hogs, which I eat according to the Bible. So I try to really be a stickler on what foods I'm going to put into my temple that are more for healing as opposed to harming. And hogs were meant to be garbage disposals of the earth and not meant for consumption. And so, we have chemical ingredients in our foods, like these right here on this screen, propylene glycol, artificial preservatives, colorings, and flavorings that a lot of kids I see are heavily sensitive to and have reactions to, and it causes neurological disorders, and our mainstream medical model doesn't have an answer. And so parents are left with an autistic child or a child that has severe behavioral disorders like ADD or ADHD or something of the like, and they don't know where to turn, and it drives frustration, it increases divorce rates, and it just doesn't make for anything good. So we really truly want to identify the health and status of the gut, and then course correct where it's necessary in terms of where to go to afterwards, like heavy metal detoxification or mold and mycotoxins, and excreting those from the body properly, or adding in nutrients to correct nutritional deficiencies. But talking about sugars and artificial sweeteners, which are also carcinogenic, we abundantly use those in soft drinks and consume more than twice the amount of salt that we should. And our salt is heavily contaminated with plastics and other chemicals, and it's the white table salt. It's not a good salt to use. And this leads to cardiovascular disorders, contributing to the immune reactions that lead to autoimmune disorders. And I want to talk a little bit more about an abundant use of plasticizers, and I don't have any plastic by me, but BPA, bisphenol A, this is a plasticizer that's used for food containers, the old Tupperware company, or other storage containers that are similar to Tupperware. Even if they say BPA free, they still have other very similar BPA-like compounds in them that are not yet tested by the EPA for safety. And so while we may be avoiding BPA through plastic bottles, what about these other plasticizers that they're using in substitute for? What kind of impact are they having on our health? And these all mimic estrogen production in our body, which is why we see so much breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, and estrogen dominance in both men and women. And we see low testosterone in men all of the time, and it's because of these environmental toxicities. And it's these are xenobiotics, outside sources of hormonal mimicking compounds. And the widespread use of antibiotics that is like dropping a nuclear bomb on your gut. It wipes out both good and bad bacteria. Antacids, Zantac 75, which has been recalled, and now you're seeing commercials for lawsuits on that because it's known to cause cancer. Then we have Prilosec OTC, Nexium, the purple pill, H2 blockers, other drugs, and many of these are available over the counter. And this adds to what we consume, contributing to that bucket and leading to many symptoms and misleading our doctors to misdiagnose us as the patient, and it's just a chronic vicious cycle. And so the health of the gut really determines your overall health. And so on the left side of this page here, where my cursor is, you can see healthy gut, and you can see what's called tight junctions. And these tight junctions are what hold the lining of our gut together. And this is one cell layer thick, and you can see the bloodstream right at the bottom. And what happens when these tight junctions break down, you can see up here pathogens and nutrients and undigested food particles will begin to fall through into the bloodstream, which causes this hyper-driven immune system, leading to the autoimmune spectrum, things like Hashimoto's and multiple sclerosis and lupus and other cancers and cardiovascular disease and such. And then we get malabsorption, which leads to nutritional deficiencies. And then we've got food sensitivities, which create their own inflammatory response. And it's literally like putting Humpty Dumpty back together when people have these types of conditions, and it's peeling back like the layer of an onion. So low stomach acid, we have extra stress and toxins, infections can now compromise our health even more, and the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like Advil and ibuprofen help break these tight junctions apart, along with wheat and gluten and other diet-induced matters that cause or contribute to leaky gut. And so really, it's the accumulation of these toxins that are coupled with nutritional deficiencies that ultimately drive and equal chronic disease and autoimmunity, cancers, and everything else. And so the modern world, in conclusion, is full of environmental toxins, and these play a role in the development of autoimmune conditions. It's estimated that there are over 80,000 toxic chemicals used regularly in the United States. There are over 500 chemicals that are stored in our body, and the average individual has at least 7 pesticides tested in their urine. Now, tomorrow night, whenever I go live, I will actually put my organic acids test and my other environmental toxicity test that I can show you what was in me. And so stay tuned for that. But this all leads to that chronic low-grade stress, and it's a modern-day epidemic that really is what creates sluggish metabolism that's driving your ability to lose weight, and chronic inflammation, and then an abnormal immune response that's driving your Hashimoto's or your ulcerative colitis, your celiac disease, or your Crohn's disease. And this stress depletes the body of critical nutrients and causes more oxidation of other various cellular components. So this elevated stress hormone levels can create digestive problems and ultimately lead to breaking down your gut lining, leaky gut, having an increased appetite, weight gain, thyroid disorders, and accelerated brain degeneration. So meaning for you and me, dementia and Alzheimer's. And by the year 2029, the entire baby boomer generation will be 65 years and older, meaning 1 in 3 will be diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. So how can we put a dent in that number and change it for the positive? And it's becoming aware of how we're living our life and what type of toxins we're coming into contact with, and lower that number, and then really eat the color of the rainbow. I'm talking about a whole food, nutritious diet, and making sure that we're eating more of a balanced meal, abstaining from fast food and processed foods and this convenient lifestyle, because it's driving our disease rates sky high. So, there's a lot of people that think they're healthy, and they're unaware that they are surrounded by this toxic world. And, the truth is that we're all toxic to a certain degree. You'll learn tomorrow night on my test that I'll share with you. And, some of the most toxic chemicals, I'm not going to cover that tonight. We'll cover that tomorrow. And, but as the bucket suggested, we're all adding to our toxic load every day, or we're trying to reduce it. And this is how I help people rebuild their life from the inside out. And it's just becoming more aware of our environment, both internally and externally, and what we're doing on an everyday basis. So stay tuned, and I really encourage you to go over to my website and sign up for my newsletter. Please do that. And if you like any of these videos, I really ask you to please share these and help me get this information out there. I can't do it all by myself, and so I'm asking you, the people who are viewing this, to help me, because I really truly believe that our mainstream medical paradigm is failing us, and they're causing more harm than healing. And so I feel in my obligatory duty to help give you this information, and to really put myself out there as someone who can help people get their health back, and be a team player with your primary care provider to put together a plan and a protocol that truly works for you. And I do this by helping people get the right types of labs in their hands and then actually knowing what to do with those results when we get them back, and not saying, oh, these are just normal. No, I've been trained to look for patterns and look for deficiencies, infections, and I help people put them on a targeted approach, and this solves the guessing game. It puts you on a very simple solution, and then it's just course correction and maintenance from there on out. So I really thank you. I want to thank you so much for tuning in with me tonight, and I'll be here again tomorrow night around 7 p.m. So please share this video, like it, give it a thumbs up, and tell everybody that you know, because I do believe everybody needs to know this. And we'll see you again tomorrow at 7, and please head over to my website, sign up for my newsletter, and my YouTube channel, Upstream Vitality, as well, where I upload all of these onto there. So if you missed the Facebook Lives, you can go back and view these at your own pace and share them from my YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much, and you're just a huge, invaluable source for my support, and I want to thank you so much and just let you know how appreciative and grateful I really am to even have the ability to go on this platform and share everything that I know, because at times it can be very discouraging, but I persevere and I endure, and I have a strong support around me. So I just want to thank you so much for those who watch and share my videos and articles. And until we see you again tomorrow night, everybody have a blessed evening. Thank you so much.